fold properties. If you look at your pattern piece now, you'll notice that some of your lines are super bright red and the others are a cool blue. This is an indication of what the angles are that you've changed your lines to. The red means that the line is less than 180 degrees, and the blue means that the line is above 180 degrees. So normally 0 or 360. This is just a good way for you to keep track of what lines have folds applied to them and what lines don't. And then the last fold property is fold rendering. This just means, do you want to see your internal line or no? And if you check off, your fold area will still be folded, but the line won't be crisp and it'll just look rolled. So if I uncheck this, you'll notice that like it's starting to smooth it out a bit. If I hide my internal lines in my baselines, you'll see that this is supposed to be smoothed out. I'm at a pretty high particle distance, so it doesn't look that great right now, but if I go down to 5 and simulate, this is a smoothed edge, and then this, with my folds rendering on, is super pointy. And depending on how realistic you want your patterns to be, what kind of material you're using, you may decide to have the fold rendering on or off. It's up to you. And that's a basic accordion pleat. So the next step is we're going to use our fold angle and fold properties in order to do a collar and create back pleats on a button-down shirt. I'm going to go ahead and open 2 women's button-down in the folds and pleats lesson folder, and we're going to live in this file for the rest of the lesson. In this one, we're going to fold down the collar, fold up the cuffs, and also finish the back pleats. And I'm going to start with the cuffs and the collar because those are technically the easiest. Like I said before, sometimes you get patterns and you don't actually have an internal line to fold, but you need one. You have this reference line or baseline. I'm just going to trace it out with the trace tool. If you double click on this line, it will select both sides for you. And then I'm going to hit enter on my keyboard. Based on the last project file, you'll probably want to select the line and change the fold angle, but it's actually not going to work on most cuffs and collars just because it's already sewn onto your garment, and when I do try to change the angle, it's not strong enough to fold down the entire pattern piece. That's okay. There's a tool. I'm going to change this back first. There's a tool that will actually help you fold down your collar. It's called the fold arrangement tool, and it works on any internal line. So once I click on it, I can select my internal line, click on that, and then a gizmo pops up, and I can use these little handles to actually move my collar and fold it back. So the easiest way of doing this would actually be to rotate so you can see the full circle of your gizmo, and then you can go ahead and just move it. I wouldn't go too far in. Once you start to see the bottom or your collar stand kind of bleed in, that's when you know you've gone too far. And it's okay to like not go down all the way. You're just kind of influencing the direction that the collar is going to go in. And like with the other project file, I do want to right click and strengthen this. It helps me make sure that this area doesn't become a problem or try to like flip back up once I hit simulate. So now I'm going to simulate it. And it should lay down nice and flat. Once I'm good, I can right click and unstrengthen. And you're gonna notice that your collar still doesn't look that great. It's really, really crisp here and may look a little blocky. If you remember from one of the first lessons about particle distance, this is a good area where having a low particle distance will make your collar look much nicer. So if you notice, it's pretty jagged right here. If I click on my pattern piece right now and go to my particle distance in my property editor, I just change it down to 5. My color is going to smooth itself out and look much more realistic. And I'm just going to simulate to update this change. Cool. If you want a really, really ironed down crisp collar, you can leave this internal line the way it is. If you're looking for more of a rolled collar look, you can turn off your fold rendering and your collar will roll out. It'll be as if that internal line doesn't exist. Or you can just delete the line if you don't need to do anything else with this collar and you're done editing it. And then once I simulate, you'll see that my collar is rolled out nicer and is smoother. If you're still getting some of this jaggedness, this is actually because of your mesh. Because we're automatically in a triangular mesh, the collar won't actually lay down super nice and flat. You can change this if you select your collar in your property editor under miscellaneous. You can change your mesh type to be quad. This will convert your triangle mesh into a quad mesh, and when you simulate, you'll have a much nicer roll. And that's just because triangles are pointy and quads are smooth. So you can kind of see it a bit over here. Cool. You can do the same for your cuffs right now. I'm just going to use my fold arrangement tool, click on them. I can do both before I simulate. And then just select both and strengthen them before I simulate. Sometimes you do run into some issues. The good thing with strengthening on is you can easily just pull at it to fix it without ruining the rest of your patterns. And then I'm gonna right click and unstrengthen to finish. I can choose to keep my internal lines or not, but I can immediately change it to be 5 particle distance. If you are working on other edits or your file's getting pretty huge, you can leave your patterns to be on a higher particle distance, but just for the sake of showing the high quality finished look, I'm going to change it down. So that looks pretty good to me. If I wanted to, I could also change my sleeves to be quad mesh and they'll look much nicer. Moving on to our back, we're going to learn how to do pleats or tucks and following the markings on this pattern piece. I have my pattern split up into symmetric parts just so I can show on one side and they'll like automatically match the other side for me. But if you didn't have a symmetric pattern, you'd have to do this on both sides. So I know my pleat is going to fold to the left, but first I need to trace out these internal lines. And we can talk about right now when you would use the fold arrangement tool and when you don't. For tucks and pleats, I generally wouldn't use the fold arrangement tool just because it's moving my entire pattern piece. So if I use my fold arrangement tool right now and try to click on this and fold it, I'm going to definitely run into some collision issues because my entire pattern piece is trying to merge inside my avatar, and then I won't even be able to select the other lines I need to fold. So I'm going to undo that. So I would suggest sewing everything else down first. So